Hello and welcome to the SANS APAC webcast series, SANS Asia Pacific Series APT Investigations, How to the Forensic Side, sponsored by ASA. My name is Ruby Souza and I will be moderating the webcast today. Your presenter is Jess Garcia. Please feel free to submit your questions at any point by using the chat or questions tab, and a brief Q&A portion will take place at the end of the webcast. Thank you for your attention. Now let me turn the mic over to your presenter, Jess Garcia.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webcast. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Today, as the title of this presentation says, we're going to be talking about APT attacks and APT investigations, and especially about the forensic side of them. This presentation is kind of a follow-up of a presentation I was doing in the SANS Incident Response and Forensic Summit in Prague last fall for last year, and I wanted to touch a number of topics which I didn't actually cover there, and have to do with how we do the forensic investigations in this case. So basically, first of all, let me introduce a little bit what we are going to cover. At the end of the day, an APT attack is a type of attack that it's just one more type of attack, okay? An APT attack stands for Advanced Persistent Threat Attack, and this is just about some attackers that are going after you, and eventually they will follow a specific strategy to keep access to your systems in the long term. Okay, let me just illustrate a little bit how this thing starts. Okay, at the end of the day, well, you're just walking in your company, just having a normal day. Everyone is happy. Everyone is just doing their job. And in many of the companies that we investigate this type of attacks, most of these companies are completely unsuspicious. Why? Maybe because they don't think this is going to be happening to them. Maybe because they don't think there is value in their companies, or they don't have intrinsic value to a potential adversary. But the reality is, in most of these cases, they are not actually preparing for this type of attacks. On the other side, someone is actually getting ready in the shadows. Okay, there is someone who is getting very well prepared. They're actually doing their homework. They're actually learning about their adversary, their potential victim, and they're collecting a lot of information about what they are, who are potential victims, like specific people inside of the organization, and how they are going to target them. Okay, they will put together in advance some type of attack, which may be from simple to very sophisticated, according to your defenses, or according to how your organization is actually protected. And eventually they will get ready to do that attack. On our side, I work for a incident response company, one eSecurity, okay, and we are every day just getting ready for this type of fight as well. So when our customers come to us and say, hey, it seems we have a problem, we have actually been working a lot in order to be able to be ready for this moment. So in the end, what ends up happening is that some of our customers, or someone who is referring us, will be giving us a call. Typically, as you know, it always happens in the less convenient moment, like in the middle of the night, or during the weekend, or at any other time, night or day. Okay, at that point, there is a real big thing that is happening on our side. Okay, we start getting ourselves in motion. We really put a lot of effort in moving our infrastructure to the customer side. When we face one of these attacks, what you need to understand is, like, this is not going to be like a 5-minute job. Okay, normally this is going to be a days, weeks, or sometimes even months job. So this means you're going to have, really, like in this picture you guys are seeing, this is going to be something that is going to be taking a lot of effort, a lot of logistics, a lot of people to put in place, and this means that you will have to put a lot of organization around it. Okay, as I said, I'm not going to be covering all the things that we do in this phase, because this was covered in the presentation I gave in Amsterdam. If you're interested, you can download the slides in the summits section of the SANS website. Okay. But as I say, there's going to be a lot happening behind the scenes, and when we arrive on site, we will be bringing a lot of processing power with us. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to get very technical, but you need to understand that many of the things I'm going to be presenting cannot be accomplished at the mass scale with just a laptop and a portable drive. Okay, we are talking here that in some of these attacks, you may be facing dozens or sometimes even hundreds of computers compromised. And can you imagine how difficult this can be in order to be dealt with? Like, imagine how many terabytes and terabytes of data you may have to process. Okay, sometimes when we request logs from our customers, they come to us with terabytes of logs. And there are lots of challenges around them, like you know, how you're going to be processing that, how the customer is going to be handling that. Again, I'm not going to go into those details, and I'm going to just focus on a couple of things. Like, let's imagine we've gone on site, let's imagine we've verified the incident, let's imagine we know there is something fishy, and we want to investigate that. Okay, so during the next few minutes, what I'm going to be doing is trying to just give you an overview of the things you guys are going to be doing in order to deal with this. There is a lot of things happening when you have an incident response of any incident, and especially when you have a massive incident, such an an advanced persistent threat incident. You're going to be having different teams dealing with the incident. There's going to be an incident management team, which is going to be just dealing with the more, let's say, logistics and trying to handle the incident, trying to contain the incident, so everything is under control. There is a bug team which is going to be doing the investigation. The main objective of the investigation team is trying to find what is really happening, what are the attacking, those questions that we always do in our forensic investigation: the who, when, why, how, and what is happening on the network. There's going to be another team, which is the remediation team, which will be taking care of trying to restore the operations at least as a minimum, so our customer actually needs or can continue to operate and not, you know, disrupt at least their most critical operations. So in the investigation side, what is going to be happening? Okay, what are we actually going to be doing? Now, let me go back for a minute to an advanced persistent threat. What is an advanced persistent threat? As I said, this is basically a type of attack where a number of attackers want to penetrate your network and try to get something from you. This something can be very different from organization to organization, but the APT attacks have become kind of a commodity in terms of attacks. One of the things I want to clarify is, just because you see the APT letters, especially the A, the advanced, doesn't really mean that the attack needs to be very advanced. Okay, I've been investigating many attacks of this type during the last few years, and what I can tell you is that many times the attack is not that sophisticated. It's just some basic attack that has been happening and that has been successful just because the organization was not properly protected, or just because the organization didn't have the appropriate detection or response mechanisms in place. So this attack was properly detected and stopped in a timely manner. Okay, so we could actually sometimes rebrand this type of attacks like something like BPTs, like basic persistent threat, right? There is actually another type of attack, which is it's called AVT with V. The AVT attacks, and I want to mention them briefly because there seems to be a trend towards this kind of attacks these days, is in the advanced volatile threat. Okay, one of the characteristics of the advanced persistent threat is the persistent keyword, right? Persistent means the attackers want to stay in your network for a long time. What is the risk of being a long time in your network? Okay, the risk is basically being caught, obviously, okay, being detected, and in the end just raising a flag and identifying what's going on. Now, the advantage of being persistent is that the attackers can get a lot of information from your organization over long periods of time. But what if the attackers don't really want a lot of information for you? They just are interested in a specific type of information that you have now. Okay, in this case, this is what we call the advanced volatile threat. You will see some type of attacks which actually are like hit and run type of attacks, where the attackers will just come to your organization, they will just steal what they want and leave. And they will not install any type of persistent mechanism like command and control or malware or anything. They just exploit the vulnerability using some type of phishing attack or malicious attachment, and they just get what they want and go out. Okay, as I said, this is a trend that you guys will have to keep your eyes on, because even when you think APT is like the latest and greatest, that's not the case. There's still more cool stuff coming from the bad guys. Anyway, let me basically go back to what may be the mechanism or the X-rays of APT attack. Most of the APT attacks, or let's say a lot of them, have this kind of structure that you guys are seeing in the screen right now. There's going to be a phishing attack. The attackers are going to be sending some type of malicious email or attachment to a victim. Typically, these victims are going to be unsuspected victims, are not going to be technology savvy victims. I find very often that the victims are executives whose names can be easily found on the internet. The executives typically have contacts with lots of people. Okay, they are used to opening PDF because that's their job, just dealing with other people from other companies and just exchanging information. So they will be very juicy victims. Okay, regardless of the methods that they use, or the specific victims the users are actually or the attackers actually targeting, once the victim has actually clicked in that attachment or in that malicious link, and most of the cases has executed some type of malware in many different shapes or forms, there's going to be some type of privilege escalation in that system. Okay, the attacker will get access originally as this specific user, and he will soon try to get a privileged account. Okay, why? Because the minute he has a privileged account, he can start doing cool things in this specific computer and potentially moving to other computers which can hold more interesting information. It's uncommon that the attackers actually find their target in the first 5 minutes, so to speak. Okay, they normally target a number of users just to get their foot in the door in the organization, and then from there, as you can see in the lateral movement side of this diagram, they will move to other more interesting targets inside of the network, for which they will probably have to do some reconnaissance. Okay, the first thing you guys need to understand, and I'm going to be covering that in a couple of minutes, is that the attackers are not going to be stealthy in most cases. They may be advanced and sophisticated in the first stages, but in order to find what they want, they will probably have to make some noise. The bad news is that our organizations are actually not prepared for this type of noise. They are not prepared for detecting this noise. It's not that they are stealth in many cases, it's just that we are not prepared to hearing that noise, right? Once these attackers have found the information they're looking for, they will actually go and try to exfiltrate it. Okay, exfiltration is typically the last phase in this type of attacks, which doesn't mean let's say it's the last phase, but taking into account that this may be an iterative process, in the sense that once they have found the information they want, they may keep to continue looking for more information they might find also interesting. Okay, I found in many of the cases I've investigated, I found the attackers exfiltrate some information, then look back, look for more information, and then they continue exfiltrating minor types of information, but which may lead to other compromises, such as subsidiaries, such as partners, or any other type of victims. Okay, so said that, let's go into some real world facts. I've been already saying that the attackers can be very sophisticated, but take into account that in most cases they are not, or at least they may be very sophisticated, but not all the time. So they may come in through one type of very sophisticated attack or very sophisticated malware, but after that they will be using normal tools, scanning tools, password dumping tools, etc., which are not necessarily difficult to find. Believe it or not, in many cases when I go to some of our customers in order to do these investigations, what I find is that something as simple as their antivirus has been screaming for days, I mean even weeks or months, just saying, hey, I have this nmap tool in this directory, I have this metasploit tool in this directory in this system, and no one actually has taken the time to actually go and take a look. Okay, so sometimes you don't really need super sophisticated mechanisms in your organization. Your simple antivirus can actually do a great job. So in any case, the conclusion is that you should start small and grow from there. If you suspect there's going to be hundreds of systems compromised in your organization, in an organization that may have hundreds of thousands of systems, you always obviously need to take this with a grain of salt and saying, well, okay, I mean, how I'm going to find those systems, okay? And my advice is start small and grow from there. There is no way you guys are going to be able to do an in-depth analysis of every single system in your organization. And to tell you more, it's uncommon that you, in a first stage, you will be able to find every single compromised system in your organization. So just start small, grow from there, and you will succeed. But at the same time, never underestimate your adversaries. I've been seeing some very, very sophisticated adversaries where they were really difficult to catch, okay? Really difficult to detect and really difficult to catch. They were really smart, and as I will say in a couple of examples there, they were very sophisticated all the times. So let's say this is not the most common technique, but they are at times, okay? Take into account that you will sometimes face professionals. Sometimes I've seen teams of attackers working 24/7 in shifts. So this means these people are not just rookies just doing some small thing. Now let's moving directly to the forensic side of things. I'm going to just starting covering some generics. Okay. In order to do an investigation, a forensic investigation, an APT case, or any other type of case, how do you actually face it? Okay, of course, the first thing you guys are going to need is forensic knowledge. As a SANS instructor, of course, I need to recommend you SANS training. Okay, SANS courses are awesome, especially for in this type of cases and knowledge, APT cases. In the SANS Forensics 508 course, we cover 90% similar to what I see every day in my investigations. And a lot of the knowledge that you guys need in order to do that investigation is going to be in the super cool SANS DFIR poster. Okay, you have the URL to download that poster in the screen right now, and I highly recommend that you guys download it and take a look, print it, put it in your office, because that's going to be one of the most valuable resources you're going to have ever. Now, the second important thing to remember is that the best forensic tool for APT investigations is you, okay? As you're going to be seeing in the next few slides, I'm going to be covering quite a few tools, but in the end, it's going to be you who is going to be needing to do the evaluation of what tool and methodology is the most adequate in each case. You will have to put things together, you will have to prioritize, and obviously when you are analyzing 100,000 computers or 10,000 or 50,000, however your network is, then you will need a lot of common sense, a lot of prioritization, and believe me, the tools are not going to give you that, okay? So the secret to success is going to be your brains and your common sense. In terms of specific tools, what I'm going to be saying is that I really love the SIFT forensic workstations. Okay, these are a couple of workstations, one for Linux and one for Windows, that you guys are going to be can use in your investigations. Okay, there's a Linux version and Windows 8 versions. They are distributed as VMware appliances. The Linux one is downloadable from the SANS website, and they really come ready for investigations with lots and lots of tools. That's really the tools I use in my daily analysis. And actually, if you take a look, I have in my desktop that you're seeing, guys, here, this is basically a modified Windows SIFT. Okay, so this is one of the tools I base my presentations on because that's the tool I really love for that. The second tool I'm going to really recommend because as part of most investigations, APT investigations, you're going to be doing some malware analysis, and I really recommend the Remnux VM. Okay, the Remnux VM is a VM appliance that has been put together by Lenny Seltzer. Lenny Seltzer is a malware analysis ninja, is a SANS instructor, and he has put an incredible amount of work in order to create this super useful VM virtual machine, which contains a lot of tools for malware analysis. Okay, you have a list of some of the capabilities in the screen. Now, another distribution I really want to mention is Security Onion. Why? Because this is the distribution for intrusion detection and network forensics. Okay, it's a distribution that is free. It's actually also maintained by a guy called BadGuys, a very warm guy from the SANS community. Okay, and it's a tool that also has 100 different tools that you can use ready just to tackle in a very, very easy way. Okay, so said that, now you guys have some, let's say, basic framework with which you can start doing your job. Okay, so in the network side, in the malware side, in the Windows side, in the Linux side. Now what? Okay, now what I'm going to be focusing is in some aspects or some methodologies that you guys can use in order to find or to investigate these APT attacks. Okay, this part, I'm going to split this in two parts. The first part is going to be more generic. In the next few slides, I'm going to be telling you some ideas on how, or some generic strategies to do network forensics, to do some type of analysis in the systems you're investigating. And afterwards, I'm going to be giving you 6 tips, which I really find extremely useful for finding malicious stuff in networks where I suspect there is an APT attack. Okay, as I say, this presentation does not pretend to be a full methodology. Okay, in investigation APT attacks. If you're looking into that, you probably want to go to my previous presentation. This investigation pretends to give you tips on how you use these forensic tools and methodologies to try to find these, or try to answer some of these questions in the network. Take into account that sometimes your investigations are going to be super long and complex. Okay, this is not something I can cover in 1 hour. I can only, to give you an idea, some of the investigations I've been dealing with, I've been working on site with my team, leading maybe a team of up to 20 investigators or more for 4 months or more, and also in shifts, almost 24/7. So that can give you an idea of how complex this can be. Some of the investigations of APT have taken me a couple of weeks to solve, so you don't necessarily need to think that this is going to be very difficult all the time. Okay, this completely varies. But again, going back to the topic, during the next few slides, I'm going to get a little technical. I hope you guys have a little background, because I'm going to be just getting a little technical, as I say. The first stage is going to be network forensics. Why network forensics first? Well, if you ask me, guys, here's my network, please find evil in this network, I'm definitely going to go the network way, the network forensics way. Why? Because it's the best way to actually find things in a massive way when you have lots of hosts. Okay, I'm going to be talking in a few minutes how to scale up. That will always be more painful than network forensics. Some methodologies that are extremely useful to catch malicious things on your network are a set of slides that you're going to be seeing now, which are I have directly stolen from a friend of mine, which is called Ismael Valenzuela. He was presenting them at the SANS Forensic Prague conference. You will have the URL of his presentation, an awesome presentation he did at the Prague Summit. And as I say, I've stolen this because that summarizes incredibly well the type of things that we look in the networks. First of all, something which is super useful in order to find even your networks, which typically will, malware will typically call back home, is going to be DNS queries which contain strange domains that should not belong to your network, such as RU for Russian domains, or Chinese domains, or BIS, or DNS for dynamically registers domains, or CC. Anything that is not common in your network, and these domains are typically not unless you have a company which operates in those countries. Okay. Another very useful thing is trying to look for incoming files, file share access attempts. These things you guys are seeing as are Wireshark filters. Wireshark is probably, most of you are familiar with that. It's a network traffic analysis tool. Is very flexible, and it has a type of filters which are called display filters. Basically, what you're seeing in the screen are display filters that you basically can directly type in Wireshark, and will select this type of traffic that I am in the bottleneck of your network, wherever your network goes to the outside, okay, in your internet links. As you see in this second filter, when I'm going to be looking for SMB commands which have to do with destination IP addresses which are outside of my internal network address, or destination addresses which look for my internal network broadcast address. So basically, in these cases, what you're going to be looking is for file share access attempts which are incoming to my organization. Okay, another very common and effective way is looking for worms creating executables on a share. Okay, this is for automated access, automated infections. And as you can see, SMB create action equals to, and SMB file contains exe will be a display filter for this. You have a couple of T-Shark filters here. One of them is dumping all the domains visited via HTTP to a text file to compare with domain blacklisted. This basically corresponds to the T-Shark command you see in this area here, T-Shark -r HTTP request. You're looking for HTTP requests, and you're looking for a couple of fields, like, the HTTP host field, and you're just sorting them unique in this domains file. What you can do later is just check for blacklisted domains. There are lots of blacklist domains lists out there on the internet that you guys can check, and and you will be able to compare to those domains, see if there is something that you find suspicious. Also, if you are suspecting a specific domain like malware.cn to name one, okay, that will be that display filter, or that T-Shark filter that I said will actually give you that. Okay, so you will be just looking for HTTP host equal malware.cn. Or if you want to just set up a passive DNS service to keep a history of authoritative DNS responses, which is basically in the case you don't have a DNS log server or a log server that records DNS logs in your network, that could be a very good way to actually keep track of those queries and sorry, of those responses, and actually be able to analyze them at a later stage. Another common trick that you will find malware malicious code doing is trying to bypass the local DNS servers. Okay, what you want to do is just trying to look for destination port 53, which is the DNS port, and not from workstations which are not your DNS server. That will probably mean that you have someone trying to go to an external DNS server, which in a traditional corporate world should not apply. Okay, and also something very common is finding for non-existent domains. This is typically very effective, because when you are looking for this type of responses, what you're going to be seeing is that you're going to be locating command and control servers that are no longer effective. And sometimes when you are looking for malware, some malware specimens will have a number of command and control servers registers. So this may be effective. An effective technique to identify them on the network. Other techniques that are covered by Ismail in his paper is the use of invalid certificates, which is commonly used by malware, okay, to do encryption, or strange user agents, okay, user agents that are not the common ones like Internet Explorer or Mozilla or Firefox or Chrome, which you will be able to use in order to identify these malware accessing the remote resources in an encrypted fashion, okay, or for user agents in a non-encrypted fashion and pretending they're normal browsers. Now, said that, let's jump now to the second part, right? We've been discussing different ways in which we can have an idea. I mean, we can just try to pinpoint where those malicious hosts are on our network. Now, the second part, or the second strategy that you guys can use, is using forensic tools. Okay, if you are forensic guys, you're probably familiar with Encase, FTK, or some of the other forensic tools, okay, such as F-Response. These tools have the capability to actually scale up in the network very well, especially tools like Encase Enterprise or FTK Enterprise or F-Response Enterprise. You will be able to just go to an arbitrary number of hosts, provided you have the right licenses. These tools tend to not be very cheap, although you may get at points good opportunities from the vendors. And then just basically sweep the network looking for specific things. Okay. In this case, this provides remote access to a big number of systems, which in the end you will be able to parse looking for specific things. If you guys don't have the budget, there are some free tools out there which you can use. First of all, you have GRR. Okay, GRR is the incident response suite for Google. When Google had their security instance last year, they basically started creating this tool. Okay, and this tool is actually has a set of features not only for remote access. I was kind of doubting when I put this under the remote access, because it really has a lot of different incident response features. But it's actually allows you the capability of investigating remote hosts. The bad side of this tool is really a little complicated to configure. Be ready to spend a few hours just working on it before you have it ready for use. Okay. Another tool which I really like. Okay, is it has been released really recently, is NDB server. NDB server allows you remote access to some for free to some to remote systems in order to do some basic access to the remote resources. Said that, let's imagine you guys already have remote access to the system. With the different tools I've been telling you, some of them will provide the capability to do memory mapping. Okay, what does this mean? It means that you will be able to map the memory of the remote system to your local system. And this is extremely useful because at that point you will be able to do a memory analysis. Of course, you can always do a memory dump with tools like Win32DD or Memorize or some others, and then analyze locally the memory dump. But you know, when you have like lots and lots and lots of hosts to analyze, that's not practical. You just cannot be dumping all the hosts and then bringing them down for analysis. So what you will definitely have to do is just do some in-place memory analysis. Looking for what? Looking for things like strange processes, strange connections, strange modules, and a number of things that I'm going to be covering during the next few slides. Okay, the idea is simple. I want to look if I can easily find in the memory something that gives me some idea of what's going on. Okay, as I say, guys, always keep in mind that the most challenging part of this type of attacks is not the individual problem, the individual malware, the individual host that has been infected, is the massive amount of hosts that you need to analyze. And then you need to prioritize in this enterprise forensic strategy that you need to really be very effective at triage, and you need to have the tools and techniques that allow you to scale quickly to do some checks and define a number of checks that are very effective trying to identify the strange things. Once you find one system or a number of systems which are potentially suspicious, then you can do your traditional deep dive forensic analysis in those systems. Okay, there are a number of tools for memory analysis. Probably the most powerful of those tools today is Volatility. I will mention others like Recall, Redline, and there are a few more out there, which are also useful. They have some limitations, or they have a specific view. So that's why I'm going to stick to the Volatility framework. Okay, the Volatility is an extremely powerful tool in order to do a memory analysis. Why? Because it allows you to find lots and lots and lots and lots of different artifacts in the memory and do a very easy analysis on them. Okay. For instance, if you run, Volatility is a very easy to use tool. It's just you just run the Volatility command, then followed by a plugin. Of course, you will need to provide the image you want to analyze. Okay, that image can be a dumped image, or this image can be basically a mapped image with a tool like a response. Okay, which allows you to map the remote memory to a local device. In any case, you will be able to run these tools with Volatility and these plugins and take a look at what's running. I'm not going to be running the tool because these tools Volatility takes some time, and I just want to show you the output of the tool. Okay, so I'm going to be just showing you how, for instance, a PS list output looks like. As you can see in this output, which is a little ugly because I have my lines are wrapping up. Let me see if I can fix this a little bit. Not completely, maybe a little more. We're almost there. Okay. Well, that's good enough. So as you can see, I have just as if I was running the PS command. I have here all the services that are running in this host. All the processes that are running in this host. The process ID, okay, the parent process ID, and the number of threads, handles, etc., and the start time of this process. Now, the idea is very simple. Basically, what you're seeing, guys, is the tool, the Volatility tool, actually walking a kind of a linked list of objects which are residing in the kernels, which are called e-process structures. Okay, the kernel keeps a number of these lists in order to just be able to answer the questions when something is asking, some process is asking for what processes are running, what network connections are running, etc. Okay, there are other. I'm going to continue because obviously I could. The objective of this talk is not to do an in-depth coverage of the Volatility of the useful commands you can run with Volatility. But PSList is, as I say, is a tool that actually works the e-process structures in order to dump the processes that are running in the system. PSScan and any other tool with Volatility plugin, which starts with the scan, is actually carving these memory structures from the memory image. And then there's some other like PXView, which actually compares the output of the N and PS3. Probably those are the most easy to use and very, very effective actually at the time of identifying malware. Okay, or identify malicious processes. There are other plugins which allow you to deal with the network sessions like connections, conscan, sockets, sockscan, which allow you to see what sessions are established, what sockets are open, etc. You can see what DLLs are used by the process with DLLs and try to identify some malicious DLLs. As you know, when you have rootkits, the rootkits will need to run in the kernel. Kernel level rootkits will need to run in the kernel space, and that means they will need to run like kernel modules. There are a couple of commands out there, Volatility plugins, which actually help you in that direction, like the modules and modscan plugins. If you want to take a deeper look at the kernel, you will be able to use the handles plugin in order to take a closer look at mutants and many other kernel objects. You will also be able to look for services that may be running on the system with the service scans plugin. If you're interested in finding users and passwords in memory, dumping the SAM password, things like dumping executables, you can do that as well. Okay, if there is a process which you are interested, you suspect this is a malicious code running in the system, you can actually dump the executable that is running in memory and do a memory analysis with your favorite tools, such as IDEPRO or OnlyDebug if you're lucky and the process is not, and the binary is not very broken. There are a couple of plugins for malware detection in Volatility, such as Malfind, API hooks, SSDT, IDT, which look for malware at the hooking or DL injection, etc. And you can also do searches in the, for registry keys in the memory in a very, very powerful way, due to the fact that the Windows registry lives in the almost permanently in the memory. Okay, with tools like modules such as HiveList, HiveDump, PrintKey, User Assistant, and many others. And even you can even recover event logs. A few of them, that's not typically very expensive with the event logs. I wanted to cover this just to give you an analysis of how extensive of a memory analysis you can do with the Volatility framework. At the same time, remember, guys, that you will probably not have time to run all these tools in all your systems. So the rule of thumb is like choose the ones that you find more effective. As I say, start with connections and processes, etc., and try to grow from there. Okay, try to find the easiest stuff first. If you don't find it, then grow. Okay, go for the most sophisticated stuff. Going in the same direction, I always like to do a quick user analysis. Okay. You couldn't believe how effective something as simple as an ls-TRL is in many cases. Why? This simple Unix command will show you the last modified. It will sort the files in last modified time. So what I really love to do is go map a specific host remotely, and go to the users directory and just list all the directories in the last modification date order. Why? Because when you have malicious activity in your network, the bad guys are actually going to be most likely using a specific user accounts or creating new accounts. Okay, and with this technique, you can very simply identify those accounts that are heavily used. Okay, in most of the corporate environment, workstations will only be used by a specific user, not by 1,000 users. Okay, so if you find an account which in a workstation which has 2 or more accounts which are in use or last access, that's going to be weird, and that's a very effective trick to catch this type of accounts. Now, one of the things I really love, guys, is RegReaper. I don't know if you guys are familiar with RegReaper, but if you are not, you definitely go out there and get information from it, because it's one of the most powerful forensic tools that you can use, and they're one of the most powerful forensic tools that you can use in also APT cases or enterprise forensics in general. Our RegReaper is extremely easy to use. It's very similar to Volatility in the sense that it's actually made of plugins. Okay, there are lots of plugins which actually are used for many different type of or let's say registry types. As you know, well, there are different types of registry types, like the SAM, the security, the software, the system, and the end-user.dat and user class.dat files, which belong to each individual user. Okay, so this means that you guys will probably want to use RegReaper on your on different registry hives. I'm not going to be running it because, again, it's going to take me a little time, and I don't want to waste a little. So basically, how cool it is to do a RegReaper analysis. One of the things I normally do when I suspect a number of workstations, and in this scales extremely well, is the following. Okay, I typically set my enterprise forensic tools to remote access tools to actually copy all the files in the documents and settings for the older systems or users folder for the newer systems, and I copy them to my analysis station. What I do later, what I do afterwards, is with a command line loop, like a for loop, for f in start, do read.pl minus r $f minus f nt user, and then redirect to $f dot read, for instance. Okay, that. With this extremely simple command you're seeing in your screen, I can read thousands and thousands of NT users that in the question of minutes. Okay, and why is this important? Because this allows you to scale up tremendously when you're doing an enterprise forensic investigation. Okay, so keep that in mind, that sometimes scaling up is just as simple as this command as you're seeing here. Once I do this, I get a number of the output, which is similar to what you're seeing here in the screen. I'm going to get just one of these outputs, and this is basically the output of Red Reaper on one of okay. So as you can see, there's going to be a lot of individual plugins when you execute it with the minus f NT user, that are going to be every single plugin that applies to the NT user registry key is going to be actually executed. And then, as you can see here, there's going to be a lot of stuff. I'm going to just count the lines of these files so you guys get a little impressed. There are 1,280 lines of valuable information here from this user. Okay, it's an incredible amount of information about what the user has been using, what document he has been opening recently, what type of executables he has been executing, how many times, what domains he has been visiting, and a long etc. How easy it is to actually read it as just as a single command as read.pl. Okay, and if you have 1,000 of them, just a simple loop as I was showing in the screen. Okay, so as I wanted to show you how impressive this is. Okay. Now, you can also just read other registry keys like the SAM, and you will get the dump of all the user accounts, local user accounts. And I will go to a more practical examples of this in a few seconds. Okay. So now you guys have some basics, and you may say, well, that's just not a lot. I mean, is that what you use in your forensic investigation? And the answer is sometimes yes. Sometimes you don't really need more than this to actually kick off your investigation and get really, really deep. Okay. Of course, after you have these initial steps, you will have to dive deeper. And as I said, this is not the point in this presentation to actually go on all the gory details on how you perform a full forensic investigation on each host. Of course, once you have found which is the first one, you will want to find what is the patient 0, so you can understand better, and you can go on do an in-depth forensic analysis. That's the more falls more on the side of the traditional in-depth, dive deep forensic analysis. I'm not going to go there. Here, my main work on one of these cases, like where can I find what I'm looking for in such a vast universe. During the next few slides, what I'm going to be giving you is another 6 effective tips in APT cases. Okay. As you may remember, one of the things I told you is that the bad guys are going to be trying to do lateral movement. Okay, typically lateral movement is done by remote sessions or remote desktop sessions, remote execution with PSXF, etc. As I told you, just something as simple as the ntuser.dat contains lots of traces of that. When a user does a remote desktop session, actually he will be doing that will leave a trace in the ntuser.dat. Guess what? From a bad guy. Very simple. If this bad guy has been trying to connect to lots of different systems using remote desktop, this ntuser.dat will contain a lot of entries of terminal services. Okay, so the only thing you need to do is just ref for terminal services. Okay, and in the ntuser.dat, and you will actually get the different all the entries which are corresponding to this end user to that user of this user. Okay, if a user has more than 10, 15 remote desktop sessions, that's very, very suspicious, because that's not common on the normal world. Well, I want to mention that if you the Citrix environments, which are very, very, very common in the enterprise world, are a perfect place for the use of this. Okay, when the malicious guys open into the organization through the Citrix door, so to speak, they will typically try to get inside of the organization. Many organizations have misconfigured Citrix servers, and they will try to jump inside from just there. Okay. A second tip I'm going to be actually telling you guys is about lateral movement and account creation. As I was telling you, and this was partially covered before, the bad guys will be creating these accounts, and you can easily identify them, like using the previous technique I was telling you, just by taking a look at the account at the creation date of the home directory of the users. One of the things that I found, even when many cases it just works very well, is a case I was doing in which the attacker actually was using the an AT job just to create and delete the account immediately after. Okay, so it was really, he created the account and set up an AT job so the account was removed a little later, actually, and it's a way in order for the attackers to cover their tracks. Okay. A third very cool technique in order to try to find privilege escalation is tool download. And actually, this also allows you to identify the infected systems. What I found in many cases is that there are like typically two different types of bad guys. Okay, there are random, what I call random bad guys, and methodical bad guys. Okay, the random hackers, actually, they're just very, they just get the things when from wherever they need it. Okay, so if they need a tool, they just grab the tool from wherever they are in your network, provided they have the capability to access the internet, which in most organizations is possible. Okay, so in these cases, the bad guys are just going to just get the tool and from the internet, from their beloved, let's say, tool repository. Now, if you have some type of network forensics tool or some proxy server, detecting of this type of activity is really cool, right? Because basically, if you are able to identify the website from which the bad guy is actually downloading these tools, and then you look in your proxy servers, then in your proxy logs, sorry, then you will be able to just grab him for that specific URL. You will be able to know which hosts inside of your network have been getting to the outside, to the internet, to that specific website, and requesting those tools. So that allows you to map where in your network the bad guys have been running some activity. The methodical hackers on the other side, as I call them, they will actually download the tools to a single repository in your organization, and they will get the tools from there, which making it a little more difficult to find unless you are able to identify what place that is. Okay. Another thing you guys need to realize when you're having a typical APT attack is that one of the things that the bad guys are going to be doing is exfiltration. And exfiltrating things is not, in order to exfiltrate something, you guys need to find it first, right? And how do you do it in order to find something? Well, you will need to look for it in the network. And one of the most common ways in which the attackers actually try to find data on the network is just by mapping remote drives into one of the hosts. Okay, so they take one of the hosts in your network and they just start mapping drives. Okay, and then just look in the drive. It's not interesting. They map another drive. This activity is difficult to find internally because our internal systems are not actually designed to actually find or detect this type of information. On the other side, when you're doing an end-user.dat analysis, as I was saying before, find this type of activities as simple as the command I just typed in the screen: grep # star. on the end user.dat ripped files. Okay, as you can see, this is the files that I got from regreaper. And as you can see, all the files that have a dash on them, all the entries that have dash on there are map drives. So with this simple command, you can easily see how many drives have been mapped from each of the users. When you see a typical APT attack, one of these users would typically have like lots and lots and lots of these entries recorded in his empty user.dat, making it quite easy to identify this activity. Also, another thing that some organizations don't, many organizations or most organizations don't have, but it is very easy to set up. It's just as simple as net flow monitoring. Okay, if you go to your network guys and ask them for net flows, they know exactly what you're talking about, because this is a very, very common network thing to do. Okay, and if you ask them to keep their net flow data and give it to you for an investigation, that's not difficult to do, it provided they've been recording previously. Okay, so doing looking for the net flow data and looking for spikes of activity, abnormal activity, that's another of the best tricks to actually identify exfiltration. And in order to, when you are looking into your systems and trying to identify malicious software, of course, identifying software can be extremely powerful. Software can be hiding. Software can be very, very difficult to find. But as I said, guys, you don't need to think that in every single case that's going to be the case, because in my experience, in many cases, that's not the case, and it's and you should go for the lowest hanging fruit first. So a very common, a very easy technique, once you suspect of some malicious software, some program which is running your system, is just get a copy of the program, either directly from the file system, or if you don't have if it's not present or it's just hiding, or you can get it directly from memory with some of the commands that I was explaining you before with Volatility, and then run it through a tool like PAD in order to identify their pack, or through tools like IDA Pro. Okay, IDA Pro, there is a free version of IDA Pro that you can download, guys. And if you take a look at the appendix of the practical malware analysis book, it's an incredibly nice book that you guys, I really recommend. There is an appendix at the end, and that appendix lists the most common API calls that you're going to be finding that malware does. Okay, so when you suspect some malware, you just go to the malware, open it with IDA Pro, take a look at the API calls, compare with the appendix, and say, oh, look at this. There is an HTTP open request, which is basically common for downloaders, or there are this or that or those API calls which are characteristics of rootkits or DLL injection or keyloggers, etc., etc. Okay, so again, one more easy tip to try to find things quickly. From there, guys, it's going to be your turn once you have identified the cool stuff to do an in-depth investigation. But I wouldn't say that's going to be the easy part, because it's not going to be. But once you have identified the compromised or the most probably compromised host in your infrastructure, then doing a deep dive analysis on them is typically the easiest thing to do. So answering some questions such as attribution, who did this attack, why this attack was done, etc., might be very difficult. Okay, in my cases, that can, in my experience, that can take sometimes weeks or months, but that's a different story. Maybe I prepare another webcast just covering those specifics. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed this webcast. We have a couple of minutes, maybe if there is some question out there, we could actually take one of them. If not, please make sure, I mean, you can send them to me, to my email address, Jess Garcia at eSecurity.com, okay, the one you're seeing right now on your screen, and please feel free to forward to me, and I will be happy to answer.
Thanks, Jess. It doesn't look like there are any real questions. So we can just have the whoever has any questions for Jess, please email him, or you can email asiapacific@sans.org. Thank you very much for your great presentation and for bringing this content to the SANS community. And to our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all the upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast. One question just from Mickey Go. He said, you focus a lot on Windows. Can you just talk about APT investigation on Linux?
That's a very good question. Thank you, Ruby. Yeah, well, basically, the challenges I was putting on the table here are common for Windows and Linux. I'm much more of a Linux guy than a Windows guy traditionally. I guess things have been changing for the last few years because of the need of doing this type of investigations in the Windows world. But if you ask me, well, first of all, the tools we've been discussing here, such as Volatility, are also available for Linux. Okay, so if you guys have a Linux tool, a Linux box that you need to analyze, well, very similarly to what I was doing here, can be done with Linux Volatility for Linux. Many of the other tools that I've been discussing typically do not apply to Linux investigations, because basically when you run a Linux investigation, you don't typically have Linux desktops in the network. And if you do, the good news is that even if you do, or if you're doing server analysis, the good news is that most of the artifacts you find in the Unix world, or in the Linux world specifically, are clear text-based. Okay, so for me, it's extremely easy to actually run a script that actually parses through the I don't know, through the etc rc directories, or through the etc directory, and finds which files have been modified. So in reality, even when it may look more complicated, because basically the tools, the vast majority of the forensic tools you typically find are for Windows, the reality is that forensic investigations in Linux are typically easier, because typically most of the artifacts you find are easier to find. Suspicious things are typically stand out much more in the Linux side. And Linux is most commonly found in server environments, and in the server environments I'm much more happier. Why? Because they are much more stable, and therefore when something changes, it's much easier to catch. So in summary, I would say that the strategies of the methodology that I've been explaining in this presentation are similar. The tools, many of them do not apply because they are Windows only, and for the most part, my tools of choice, aside from memory forensics and Volatility in Linux, are going to be command line tools that I can use and script on the Linux side.
Okay, he said thank you for your answer, and I think that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much again, Jess. Thank you everyone for attending, and we will say goodbye now. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected.